Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as being the vice chair of the New York State Party. With us is our good friend, esteemed colleague, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I have to begin the show today, Jesse and Eric, with this tragedy that just occurred.
Horrible.
A horrible, sad, great loss of life between a Black Hawk Army helicopter and an American Airlines flight. I understand from the latest reports all lives were lost. Young people, lovely people, prime of their lives just wiped out in a flash.
Members of the American national skating team.
Yeah, just a terrible thing. So our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts go with the families and with these poor souls who lost their lives. Now, Jesse, before we got on air, you had told Eric and me that you've had some experience with these airline disasters.
Yes. First of all, like you and Eric, I share my thoughts and prayers with those souls that were lost and their families. I am heartened that on Thursday, the president was very direct in making sure of not only comforting those families, but saying directly to the American people what steps to be taken to alert everyone as to how this transpired and that it should not have transpired. But for those of you, of our listeners who don't know, back in 1996, about 29 years ago, was a better time period in the calendar. It was July, but Flight 800, TWA Flight 800 exploded over the Great South Bay, and the remains of those hundreds of passengers and the plane itself fell into the waters of Santa Mauritius. I was back then a 30-year-old chief of staff to a new town supervisor that was elected 6 months earlier, Felix Grucci of the Grucci fireworks fame. And for the first few hours, along with the men and women of the Suffolk County Police Department, our volunteer firefighters, we were the first responders on site to coordinate the rescue of that tragic operation. So I kind of know what they're going through right now as you mobilize the boats. And back then, it was July, so the waters were a lot warmer. Our responders right now in the Potomac are dealing with waters that are somewhere between 35 and 37 degrees as they look for recovering more of their bodies and the black box as we do this taping. But it's a mobilization, and I will tell you, it's a mobilization of multiple agencies to try and do that. And as of Thursday, when we're recording this, I'm so unfortunate that we have gone from a rescue mission and transformed to a recovery mission. But this is going to be a long time. It's going to be a long slog to try and secure as many of the parts of that plane. And back in Flight 800, we had divers from New York City PD. We had experts from FBI and the federal agencies, and literally almost every square inch of Flight 800, which was a 747 back then, was recovered and was rebuilt and stored at Calverton's Grumman facility, so that the NTSB and its analysts could determine what finally transpired, which brought down Flight 800.
Did they ever get a real answer to that, Jesse?
I think the answer the government came was that there was a problem in the holding fuel tanks that caused a spark, and that's what led to the explosion. The tanks were not full, and there was vapor that once it sparked, it ignited and she blew up. Now, listen, I remember being, I think it was a number of people along the coastline remember thinking that there were some conspiracy theories that they saw a missile-like action shoot up towards the Flight 800. That, by an official inquiry, was debunked. And honestly, I really don't know if we'll ever find out because, as the theories all go, and this was confirmed, Groton, which is on the Long Island, on the North Shore and the South Shore of Connecticut, but on the Long Island Sound, that naval base and submarine base was undertaking maneuvers and war games in the area. So was it an errant missile and such? I think the difference here is that and we didn't have social media back then, thank God, but I think that this president, this administration is already started on Thursday, was very direct, very clear in what they thought the issues were. It was an accident. It was an unfortunate accident. It should never have happened. That helicopter should never have been in the same at the same level as
should have been in the area.
Yeah, I mean, what is a military helicopter doing anywhere near one of the busiest airports in the world? It
was supposed to come in, as I understand, and I'm just reporting as it was coming in after doing a training mission. I guess they're.
Yeah, but why are you training there? There's an entire Atlantic Ocean to train over. Why are you training near Reagan Airport?
I think in the days, we'll find out about that. But certainly, I think that the president was very direct, and this is why. And we could get into this a little bit later because we're going to talk about wokeness and DEI and stuff. I think the president was very clear. Regardless, this was an accident and a tragedy that could have been avoided, and it should have been avoided. And this is why you need the best and the brightest.
Yeah, but what's the nexus to DEI here? What am I missing? I mean, the
nexus is that the orders that Obama and Biden had in the FAA in the hiring of air traffic controllers.
Right, no, I understand that, but is there any indication that anybody involved in this
is a
DEI hire?
That's the right question.
No.
So why are we raising it?
What's happening? I think the reason that they're using it is because the president's press conference, I think he utilized it by saying that the air traffic controllers never should have had that helicopter and that passenger jet at the same flight level coming at the same time. And I think that probably when this airs on Sunday, which is a couple of days after we're recording it, I believe that more of the tapes are going to be released, and we'll be hearing of that. Already, we have heard the transmissions of the tower allowing the American Airlines Eagle flight, which I think had about 61 or 60 passengers, come in. It was on its normal flight path. This is the flight path that every passenger jet using that runway has used since the opening of Reagan National. And that for one reason or another, they asked the helicopter on a clear night, do you see, and whatever the call numbers were of that, of the American Airlines passenger vehicle. And it led to this unfortunate.
I tell you, but my problem, Jesse and Eric, okay, I have two problems. Number one, I watched some of the press conference. And I've said often on this show and other shows I'm on, I'm against DEI and hiring for any
100%.
Any prime position.
100%.
I'm certainly, and I often say I don't want to have an airline pilot as a DEI hire or a brain surgeon as DEI. Okay, but I don't necessarily see that there's any evidence to support that the people who were doing this work and controlling the traffic at that time were DEI. So I think you have to be careful about saying that that's an approximate cause. If you want to talk about, I'm committed to hiring only the best and DEI has nothing to do with it, that's a different comment.
Perhaps maybe I used bad language.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
No. I think that's exactly what the president was speaking about because he was able to speak to three orders. One, a DEI order on the hiring of FAA regulations. And I think he read from their press release and their website, which basically said that reduced, the type of qualifications. He then discussed his order, which said, we're colorblind. We just want to get the best and the brightest to put here in air traffic control.
We all agree with that. I just think we have to be careful. To Richard's point, I just think we have to be careful of blaming DEI I mean, no one's more opposed to DEI than I am. It's unconstitutional.
No, I am too.
Well, I don't know.
So
it'll be close.
So now we have a fight on who's more opposed to it.
But unless there's evidence that that's at play here, I'm not sure where it gets us. I mean, I think to the point you were making originally, Jesse, it is critically important that we get to the bottom of it, just so we don't get all these nonsensical conspiracy theories. And that was one of the great failings of prior administrations. Right. So to the extent that, our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, who I think is a serious guy and will be an excellent secretary.
And today was his first day.
Yeah, I was going to say, welcome to school. Today's your first day. He's got to deal with this. I have every confidence he'll be able to do that, but it's really, really important to get to the bottom of it, be able to explain to the American people what happened, wherever the facts lead, and then get that information out there as quickly as possible, because otherwise you're going to get all kinds of crazy theories.
Agreed. So let's move on.
About crazy theories, if I could just jump on that for a minute. And I think one of the things that is good and refreshing about this administration, I know we're going to get into it, is that remember in December we were all worried about these drones. We weren't getting any information on those drones. The president said, as president-elect, that within days, I'm going to let you know what the drones were.
That's great.
And back in December, he did say the administration knows what these drones are. Why they don't share what these drones are, we don't know, but they should, and that he will. And if you notice, there seems to be no credibility gap, because in her first press conference, the new press secretary outlined what those drones were, that they were FAA drones who were on an authorized research exercise, and that it was also compounded by those hobbyists and those enthusiasts.
Well, why wouldn't they tell us that? Well,
I don't know.
Why?
Yeah. That's the right question.
If it's as benign as that, why wouldn't they tell us that?
Exactly. Now they'll go back and they'll say that they did try and say that they did try to say it was authorized. They were never that clear and concise. I also think it goes back to one of the topics we'll discuss, is that towards the end of his administration, no one trusted what came out of the Biden administration. Whether the American people did not trust what their government was telling.
Well, let's assume and I agree with you, no one trusted them, but at least say it. They didn't say anything. They didn't give us any information.
Listen, first of all, right now, and I want to get to this now in a minute, but I want to say right now we finally have a president who's a president, and right now we finally have a White House press secretary who's actually a press secretary. So you have two merit appointments or positions being filled by merit people, as opposed to what you had before. An absentee president locked away, and a press secretary, if she wasn't reading pre-canned packaged comments from her briefing book, had no idea what she was talking about. So I think we're ahead of ourselves. So this is what I want to say to both of you gentlemen. And this is my first comment of the day on the scheduled topics. Okay. All right. My first thing I want to say is Trump takes command in Washington. And my view of this is he's made some smart moves. He's made some good public policy decisions. And he's made some not so smart moves and not so good public policy decisions. And that's what I want to discuss about first. Look, the good news is he's going after DEI. He's securing the border. He's rounding up the cartels and the gang leaders and the terrorists and the child abusers and the sexual traffickers, drug dealers. He's going after those people. He's going after DEI. He's going to make our cities and states and counties and towns safer. He's securing the border. The number of people trying to break through the border now have gone down dramatically. Over, I think the number Jesse and Eric is over 95% reduction since then. He has Tom Homan, who's an extraordinary appointee as the border czar. Those are good moves. Those are strong moves. He is issuing executive orders that will promulgate strong energy policy to make us energy independent, get away from reliance on fabulous nonsense like wind and solar, which can never do the job, and understanding that you have to unleash our energy potential. I think those are all very, very good moves and ideas. My idea about bad moves or bad public policies, look, the idea about moving, and I know Eric, because he wrote a great column about this, disagrees with me on this. I think it's a very bad idea to say you can move all the Palestinians out of Gaza. Okay. I'd love for them to be out of there.
What I said was that it's not crazy and that there's a lot of historical precedent for it.
Right.
And that if you can make that work, wonderful. I'm not saying it's going to be the answer. But there's the people who are responding to it by lighting their hair on fire as if this is something unique in human history is just wrong.
Okay, no, I don't disagree with that. But the fact is Egypt's not going to take them and Jordan's not going to take them, so where are they going to go?
And the great irony of that, from 1948 to 1967, when Egypt and Jordan attacked Israel in an effort to destroy it, Egypt annexed Gaza and controlled Gaza from 1948 to 1967. Did anybody care that there should be a Palestinian state? Did anybody say that the Egyptians should withdraw? Of course not. And Jordan annexed illegally the West Bank from 1948 to 1967. Did anybody say the Jordanians had to leave the West Bank and give the Palestinians their own state? Of course not. They waited until the Jews fought a war of self-defense in the Six-Day War in 1967 when they conquered those territories. Then all of a sudden there had to be a Palestinian state.
Okay, Jesse, you now realize why Eric is my hero. You see how he just did that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm here to help.
Okay, next. I think the idea of Trump's to take away security from Bolton, from Pompeo, and from Hook is as bad an idea as one can have. Senator Cotton, who's chairman of the Intelligence Committee,
we agree 100%.
Has gone, well, thank God for that, has gone out of his way. He's been interviewed on the Sunday shows. He's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, the New York Post editorial board are against it. It's a bad idea. You discourage people from working in government and giving the president the best possible advice out of fear of their own safety because their protection can be removed because of personal pique. That's a bad idea. God forbid somebody is killed, whether it's an innocent killed when they try to take out one of these gentlemen or it's one of those gentlemen themselves. It's an awful idea, and it will destroy Trump's presidency.
It also makes him look petty and spiteful.
Okay. I don't know if it's going to destroy his presidency. I really don't think the American people. And let's also listen. I'll be honest with you. I'm the first to say that I'm really not that well versed I can speak with a great confidence here. But I think that one thing the president did say, because when one person that you missed that had his security clearance and had his security detail removed from them was Fauci.
Oh, Fauci. Well. Okay.
Yeah, Milley.
Well, not everybody's in the same situation, but the three people, when Tom Cotton was talking about, he's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, when he's talking about he's seen the intelligence and that the threats against their lives from Iran are credible and real, and that Tom Cotton would encourage the president to rethink his decision.
I think that's the proper way of doing that.
And that's fine.
The proper way of doing that is the person that's in charge of that committee. That's why we have a legislative branch and an executive branch. And now it's now the charge of the chair of Senator Cotton to implore, to urge, to advocate for those security details to be reinstated for the facts that he has. We do know, and we've seen, I use Fauci as an example. A lot of these individuals also have made a great amount of money in the private sector, based on their positions in government, the influence that they purportedly have and the access that they have had with security clearances and such. More so than some of our cops do, or even we've seen some of our criminal informants that go on the stand get. But that being said, if Senator Cotton has the compelling information that the CIA director has and the director of intelligence has, it's that way of the two branches of government working together to, you want to say fix a wrong, correct a situation so that the protections are there for those who truly require it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I think on that we generally agree because not everybody's similarly situated. But when you have this situation with Iran and the intelligence is so strong, I just think
and
it's
also you encourage some crazy trying to suck up to the Iranian regime. Yeah. So it may not be directly, let's say Iran says, no, we're not going to do it. But you have some crazy trying to suck up to the regime, goes out on their own and does it. It's a bad idea.
And the other thing I'd put...
A lot of these individuals, and let's be honest, after a government service, I'm not grading their government service, but after a government service, they now peddle their experiences and their networks and their Rolodexes to a variety of corporations and a variety of news media and such. And listen, they're making coin off of that. And why should that be? And based on whatever Senator Cotton has seen, whatever the CIA director has seen, if it's valid that they should get security details, then that they should be compelling the administration to do that. But listen, like we just discussed, not everyone's at the same level of threat, and anybody in any government position could also be the subject of someone trying to gain favor with a regime or whatever you may want to call it, a zealot.
Yeah, but not respectfully, Jesse. I agree with your point as a general proposition, but these three particular people are responsible for taking out the leader.
They played a role in the killing of Soleimani,
and that's a big deal.
Which is a big deal.
Makes it unique,
and it was a great decision. It was the right thing to do.
It is a great decision.
And their lives, their lives are put at risk because of actions they took while in government
and doing the right thing
to
protect America. I just want to. We're going to have to break in a moment, so I just want to raise two other issues with you, which I think are bad ideas. Listen, I'm all for helping California. I think we should help California. That's one. Number two, I'm all for having some sort of recovery czar to reestablish quality of life and infrastructure in California, because I don't trust the Democrats in California to spend the money wisely and well and not make it self-dealing for their own favored allies. I'm all for a czar to spend the money, and I'm all for spending the money. What I'm not for is Trump linking this to he'll give you the help, but you have to have voter IDs. Keep it separate. One thing has nothing to do with the other. It shows a disrespect for the suffering of the people in California and for the state of California. It takes away your integrity on this issue. I think that's a mistake. And the last thing I want to say before we break it, I'll allow Jesse and Eric to comment on these last two when we open up the second segment. The other thing is on this delay or nullification of the TikTok law. I respectfully submit that now and by the way, two of the best constitutional professors I know, and I know them both, one Alan Dershowitz of Harvard, the other John Yoo of University of California at Berkeley, both distinguished gentlemen, both clerks on the United States Supreme Court, distinguished constitutional lawyers and public servants. They have different views. Alan Dershowitz believes that the president had a right to delay this for, 90 days or whatever, 75 days, 90 days. John Yoo, who just wrote into the Wall Street Journal on this, and we had him on the show the other day, as well as Dershowitz on different night, but same issue. Yoo believes that the president has no right to do that. The law is very, very clear. Unless you had a real hot deal going on, there's no reason to delay it, and there's no legal right to delay it. I think John Yoo has the better part of that argument. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in but a few moments with more interesting and important conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Buick. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Buick Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit Buick.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos Remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See RemixYogurt.com.
custom window treatments are a small upgrade that have a big impact. No better time to shop than now at Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale now. Save up to 50% site-wide, plus a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Jesse Garcia. Chairman Garcia is chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party as well as the vice chair of the New York State Republican Party. Our good friend, esteemed colleague, Eric Levine, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Let's pick up where we left off as we close out the first segment. Eric, your thoughts. You had a number of comments on several issues.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100% on the TikTok. I line up with Senator Cotton, who thinks that is a bad idea to extend or give a reprieve to TikTok, that it should be sold to an American or at least to an ally as opposed to an enemy like China, the Chinese Communist Party.
Because the danger,
they're mining all this information,
and they keep doing it while this extension goes on.
Right, and the algorithms they put out there when you log on to them. For instance, you log on to Israel-Hamas war, you'll get 85-90% pro-Hamas links and 5-10% pro-Israeli links. Young women will go on there, and it encourages them to have eating disorders. Young boys will go on there, and it encourages them to commit suicide. This kind of social app is really an affirmatively bad thing, and it really needs to be shut down and in the hands of people that we can trust. I agree with 100% on the California
linkage.
The linkage. Look, I have no problem linking the aid to changes in the laws that impact how water is used in California, because that is directly tied to the tragedy. But to tie it to and the way I know that I'm right and Richard is right, because my wife came up with this, and immediately when she heard this, to link it towards voter ID. Look, I support voter ID.
We all do.
We all do. I mean, any rational person who wants a fair and free election would support voter ID. But to link it to this, all it does is it makes the pain and suffering of those who've had their houses burned down and need immediate help. It just really,
it's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful. But the one thing you left off that I would include is the January 6th pardons. And I've been on the record before. I have no problem, if you want to give a pardon to people that got caught up in the moment and trespassed in the halls of Congress and just kind of lost control of their senses for a moment. All right, I get that. But to give a pardon to people that assaulted law enforcement, I'm with J.D. Vance on this one. Before the president gave the pardons, J.D. Vance was very clear in an interview that he did not think it would be appropriate to be giving pardons to people that assaulted law enforcement. Yeah, to give pardons to Oath Keepers and Proud Boys who were there specifically to do violence, that just rubs me the wrong way, and I think those were a mistake.
Jesse, what are your thoughts on that?
Number one, I will claim that I'm the biggest proponent for voter ID because it directly.
No, you're not. I am.
Elections. Free and fair elections is what I make my living on and what I live on. But I do listen. I think that the president. What I find interesting though is I think the difference between Trump 45 and Trump 47, that Trump 45 would continue to double down on maybe a statement linking that aid to voter ID. This one, after the first balloon that was shot up, we haven't heard it again. What we have heard, though, is what everyone has been speaking about. The aid should be linked to proper water usage, a proper management plan, a fire management plan, everything that California, Los Angeles has been failing to doing that continuously fuels the fires of this repeat of wildfires that we go forward. Their negligence has in part led to these wildfires. So linking it to them having a better management plan, better policies, and better funding locally to help themselves is key to that. But I think what we want to point out is that the president does say things, but instead of making it a sideshow on just voter ID, He went back and he just spoke specifically about those issues of management. And listen, there's no better way of respect than the governor greeting the president when he landed to survey.
He was uninvited. I mean, he just kind of said, Here I am.
Uninvited. Exactly. And let's be honest. They worked well, according to both men, during COVID, but for some reason or another, it evolved over that time. And elections will do that. But
political ambition does that, Jesse. Yeah, you have Gavin Newsom who wanted to be the nominee.
Newsom running for president in 28.
Right. I did see a far more prepared president, a better measured president in the way he greeted the governor and toured with him. So that really being left there. January 6th, listen, I was on record last week. You put your hands on a cop, you got to go to jail. And I think J.D. Vance was right in that. I do think in a follow-up interview when he had to become combative with the Face the Nation reporter this past week, he did say, and despite the fact that this is the case, that there was a weaponization and there was a suspension of the rules and laws and the rights for these J6 defendants, that still, you put your hands on a cop, you gotta suffer the consequences of that.
100%.
Because if we don't have that, then there's no respect for law and order here. Now, I may be a little bit not up to speed on things, but what I find interesting is that the police officer that shot one of the J6, we'll call them rioters,
the Capitol Police Officer. We've never known his name. We don't know what his disposition was. I don't even believe he was charged with a crime.
No. He was an unarmed veteran. But
Jesse,
we never heard what happened to that Capitol.
I'll fill you in. Breaking news. I'll tell you exactly. They released his name, which I totally forget. It was never presented to a grand jury, as it would have been in any other circumstance, for an investigation and at least a report, if not an indictment. Okay. And she was not armed. He shot into a crowd. And he could have killed a number of people. He killed her, the poor woman.
It was reckless disregard.
And a total reckless disregard. This is clearly criminally negligent homicide at best, and maybe manslaughter, depending on what the laws of the District of Columbia are. But I'm telling you this. You know what happened to that guy? Pelosi made sure he got promoted and he got a raise. So we do know what happened to them. So that's the biggest cover-up. So, Jesse, that's the biggest whitewash cover-up. It's disgusting. And they know about his history, that he was a flaky guy who had all kinds of issues before. So that the fact that they whitewashed this, they covered up, is a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. So let's move on. Gentlemen, I want to talk about Trump's nominations and appointments. Some are excellent choices. Some are troubling choices. And then the other thing I want to talk about is there's already a power struggle beginning in the White House. The chief of staff is starting to make her moves to try to exercise control. How did she do that? Well, you had Musk wanted Vivek out because there was a battle of egos there. And Vivek has nothing but ego, I have to tell you that, having met the guy. And he's not saying he's running for Ohio.
He's not shy like Elon Musk.
No. Well, he may. Listen, he's accomplished, but he's not nearly as accomplished as Musk.
That's for sure.
But Musk wanted an office in the West Wing, and she turned him down flat cold. So good for her. So they move out one guy who's a problem, and they don't put Musk in as a so-called co-president next to Trump. I think those are good moves in terms of her.
It's very wise.
Very wise indeed, because you only have one president at a time.
Yep.
But let's double back. Let's talk about Trump's nominations and appointments. I submit to you some are excellent and some are troubling. Eric.
Well, I mean, under the excellent category, Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik. Michael Waltz isn't a cabinet appointment, but he's national security advisor, doesn't need the Senate. The head of the CIA. Radcliffe is spectacular. Sean Duffy's terrific at transportation. I mean, Bessent in Treasury. The list goes on.
Burgum and
Burgum, Nome. These are all highly qualified people that are going to serve the country well. But then then you have a few, and they're going through the confirmation hearings
as we speak.
As we speak, today's Thursday the 30th, as we're recording this. A lot of people talk about Kash Patel. I just don't know about Kash Patel at all. I know people who I respect and hold in high regard that think he's terrific. Similarly, I know people who I respect and hold in high regard that think he's terrible. I ultimately think he's going to get through. I just don't have any information really to say one way or another about him. But then you have the other two that are testifying today. Yesterday was RFK, and today is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, will RFK get through? I'm not sure. It can go either way. I think on balance he probably will. But I was very taken by one exchange that he had with Senator Elizabeth Warren. I don't think I would ever say these words. I agreed with Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Would you
I didn't think it would be possible for me to say that.
My nitroglycerin tablet.
Exactly. So what was that? So she was asking him. Apparently, RFK, who's an attorney, gets 10% referral fee from a law firm whenever he refers a client to them, who then sues a pharmaceutical company. And
that's big. That's very big money.
It's very big money. And she asked him, if you become HHS secretary, will you agree that you will give up that arrangement? And he refused to do it. So in other words, he will be in a position to regulate entities that his law firm is suing for his profit. I'm sorry, that cannot stand. He has to give that up. And until he does, I don't know how he can be confirmed. If the Senate does want to confirm him, I hope that he is required to give up that economic arrangement.
Yeah, and let him give it to a charity.
No, just get out. Just not be in the business at all. Because
I agree.
That still gives him an economic incentive to undermine the entities that he's regulating.
Previous comment withdrawn. I submit that you're correct.
Okay, thank you. And then we fast forward today in Tulsi Gabbard. Now, there was a whole range of questions regarding Tulsi Gabbard. But the exchanges, I thought, in particular, with Senator Langford, the conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma, and Senator Bennett from Colorado, they both asked her repeatedly, over and over again, at least 5 or 6 times, do you believe that Edwin Snowden was a traitor? Very simple question, yes or no? The answer obviously is yes.
And for our audience, for those who is Edward Snowden?
So Edwin Snowden was an intelligence officer who stole all kinds of top secret information, gave it to the Chinese, gave it to the Russians, escaped to China, eventually found his way to Russia, and is now a Russian citizen, and has put American lives at risk, and has disseminated some of the most closely guarded secrets of American intelligence. That is the definition of a traitor. And if the person who wants to be the head of the National Intelligence Services is incapable of saying without equivocation that Edwin Snowden was a traitor, you are not qualified for that position. And I encourage the Senate, to a person, to vote no on Tulsi Gabbard. Her inability, she has other problems, but that one could not be any more glaring. She will pose a national security risk to the United States if she cannot identify what a traitor is.
Well, I have 2 other problems with her. One,
I have many other problems. Yeah, but that's the one that's making my head explode.
Well, that's because you just heard the question and answer today. Okay. But other things that make my head explode, she was an apologist out of the Tucker Carlson School for Putin, and she said nice things about Assad, who's a mass murderer. Jesse, we have a couple of minutes. Your turn.
Sure. First and foremost, let me just say that I believe that anybody, whenever you put a cabinet together, you're going to have people who are going to disagree with one or a few of those individuals. I believe that these individuals, some of them, are going to, I think all of them are going to be confirmed. And I'm very proud that Suffolk's favorite son, Lee Zeldin, received bipartisan support.
We love Lee.
We all love Lee.
Administrator.
Right.
So let's congratulate him, Lee Zeldin of Shirley, New York. But I believe that, number one, I do think that I believe that the White House Council on Ethics are going to have to require any of the outside businesses for any of these nominees or these future secretaries. Those business ties have to be ended, and I agree with that. The thing I also want to point out to you, without saying one person specifically or not, is that this president was elected to be a disruptor. Everything he said he was going to do, the people of this country have seen, and I've said this over and over again since his election, that people know what he was going to do, what kind of people he was going to be bringing on board. I do believe that some of these individuals have given Democrats and the mainstream media low-hanging fruit to attack them. It's important for the Senate to do its job, to vet out these candidates. But in the end, I believe the president, and I believe implicitly that the president is entitled to his team. If they fail, then it's on the president. It's on his desk that he placed these nominees. I'm confident that they're not going to fail. I'm hopeful they're not going to fail because I want America not to fail. We want them to all be successful in whatever capacity they are. However, we should put in safeguards like eliminating private business interests, eliminate those questions so that their actions can be considered pure, honest, and all for the benefit of the American people.
That's very well said. We're going to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be right back for our final segment of this week's show.
This is Let the Record Show.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, as well as being the vice chair of the New York State Republican Party. With us is our good friend, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Eric, we were closing out the last segment, and you had a few more thoughts on appointments.
Yes, I mean,
nominees.
With all due respect to my very good friend out there in Suffolk, Jesse. As it relates to Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, I agree with you that the president is entitled to great deference to get his team. But when the people of the United States elected Donald Trump to be president, they did not simultaneously vote to disband the Senate. They have a very important advise and consent role. And the advise and consent role does not stop at, let's have a hearing, let's hear what they have to say, and then we're going to vote yes no matter what they say. It matters what they say. And if you're in charge of intelligence, you're a person, you're going to see all the intelligence reports from the various, I think there are 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, and you synthesize them, and you put it together, and you are the one presenting to the president the daily briefing. If you don't know what a traitor is, if you don't know how to handle
it's
intelligence... It's
kind of like a Supreme Court judge who couldn't say how many sexes there were.
Yeah, well, I think this is worse. If you don't know what you're supposed to do with top secret intelligence and how you're supposed to safeguard it, and that if you think someone, as she has said in the past, that Edwin Snowden was actually a hero, she didn't say that at the hearing today. I just think that is just disqualifying. I mean, if she were appointed for some other position, maybe she
Secretary of
Agriculture, HHS. Transportation, that's
no,
different.
I wouldn't. Given what's happened, I wouldn't give her transportation.
But regardless, that's different. She's being put in charge of American intelligence. If you can't say that Edwin Snowden is a traitor, you can't have that job. You're not qualified, and it's not a question of not a matter of calling into question, her patriotism. She served in the military. I'm not questioning her patriotism. She's a great patriot. She's just not qualified, and she does not have the judgment. And the Senate should vote no.
Rebuttal to that, Jesse, before we move on?
One thing I would say this is that you're absolutely correct. A traitor is a traitor is a traitor. However, how has the advice and consent gone from the Senate in the last number of intelligence officials under the Biden or the Obama administrations? They came in with all this fanfare. They came in with all these qualifications. They came in with the mainstream media protecting them. And what do? They sell out to the United States. They lied to the American people, and they made us less safe. So to be honest, to be completely honest with you, in this case, I don't disagree with you. A traitor is a traitor is a traitor, but I have enough trust and judgment of the president and the mandate he received to at least give him the opportunity to see what his team's about. If they fail, and there are protections, as we know, because Republicans and Democrat intelligence officers have all fallen victim to this, and when they've done wrong, it will be found out. And, the idea is to find that out before significant damage is done. But to deny the president his ability to put his team together, I think that the Senate already has demonstrated that their advice and consent has kind of put this in a bad situation in years past.
Well, I will agree with you on this 100%. It makes me laugh out loud when I hear Senate Democrats talk about, is this the most qualified person for this cabinet position?
Exactly. Yeah.
When you look at the Biden cabinet, what a parade of losers, freaks, and misfits.
Don't forget mediocrities.
And no, that's too much. They were worse than mediocre.
You're insulting mediocrity.
Exactly. There's not a single cabinet member that in the Biden administration that you can point to that said was successful, that did the job well. They are all incompetent. So it kind of makes me laugh when they're criticizing the Trump choices. But to come back to a point you were just making, Jesse, it's one thing if you have, let's say, RFK gets HHS and he makes mistakes, he falls on his face or whatever it is, and the public speaks out. What he does will be out there in the public. There's transparency. With someone in charge of it, by definition, someone who's running intelligence, it's behind closed doors. You don't see what they're doing. You can't run an intelligence service if there's complete transparency and it's out there. So the American people are not going to see her mistakes. They're not going to see her bad judgment. So that's why this is unique.
The American people would not see that. However, we just discussed how Radcliffe was one of the best selections that he made. He's going to be right there in that trioca in the intelligence division.
Yeah, but he's funneling information to her. He's funneling information to her. His sovereignty ends once he hands off that intelligence to her to be synthesized for the president's daily report. Yes, he will meet periodically with the president and give his assessment. But she is the one in the day-to-day contact. She is the one who's going to be through whose filter intelligence is going to run.
She can editorialize.
Yeah, that's the problem.
She can editorialize.
That's the danger.
No, I have to tell you something. I have real problems with some of the acolytes surrounding Tucker Carlson. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy was one of them. Tulsi Gabbard is another. He either made or resurrected their careers. I think both of them are very suspect. I wouldn't have either one of them in important positions. That's me. I'm not talking about as a Democrat. I'm talking about as a citizen who's worried about the future of this country. All right. I want to ask, to start off the two other topics I definitely want to get to. The Democratic Party's nervous breakdown. Who's to blame? Who are its new leaders? And Jesse correctly pointed out, since I'm the Democrat on the show, it's my problem. Okay. My problem is the party's been taken over by the radical left. The centrists didn't have the strength, the courage, the ability to put them in their place. Periodically, Nancy Pelosi would try to push back on AOC and what do they call them? The herd, the crowd, the squad. I actually think it's the herd. The herd. The herd.
What did the herd hear?
That's right. I think they are the worst.
We're going to get in trouble now.
Good. I hope so. All right, look. So who's to blame? The Democratic Party's having a nervous breakdown because they nominated two of the worst candidates ever for the presidency and the vice presidency of the United States, Harris and Walz. One was worse than the other. They would have been a disaster for this country if they had been elected. I really believe, in my honest judgment, and I'm the Democrat, that if those folks got elected, we'd never recover from the damage that this country would suffer, because I see what they did to us in the last 4 years, and plus, don't forget the 8 years of Obama. Some things you just can't recover from, and that would have been one of them. Or if you could recover, it would be decades and decades and decades, and the cost would be enormous. So who's to blame? The Democratic Party should blame itself for allowing itself to be controlled by the crazy left, the woke. Who are its new leaders? There are no new leaders, and that's the problem.
Well, that's very common for the party out of power. There's no unified spokesperson.
Have they, by the way, elected a new national chairman yet?
I don't think that's been done yet.
They done that?
Still having that election.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're smart, they'll get somebody.
Maybe they're still rigging it.
I'm sorry?
I said maybe they're still rigging it.
I'd be shocked. Next year, we tell me there's gambling going on at Rick's place in Casablanca.
I bet there'll be voter ID to get into that freaking vote.
I've agreed with that. Okay. And you have to make sure the reservoirs are filled before you have that voter ID in the Democratic Party. The water coolers have to be filled. Look, this is the problem. You don't have anybody who's a natural leader of that party. There's nobody you can look at in the House, the Senate, or the governor's chairs who are natural leaders of that party, who can build a consensus to bring it back to the common sense center. That's my problem. So who are its new leaders? God knows. I have no idea. Who's to blame? The Democrats themselves and the crazy left that took over the party.
Of course you love a pint of Ben & Jerry's, but maybe you don't love sharing your pint of Ben & Jerry's. No problem. Now you can share the love with Ben & Jerry's new Scoop-A-Palooza. 28 whole ounces of crowd-pleasing flavor in a single tub. It's an instant ice cream party. And if that means your favorite pint is left just for you, so be it. Ben & Jerry's new 28-ounce Scoop-A-Palooza. Made for sharing in 4 larger-than-life flavors. See benjerry.com/palooza.
Jesse, what do you say?
Well, the Democratic power vacuum, they have to look in the mirror. It was their policies. It was their approach to campaigning. It's the lies that they have perpetuated over the last 4 years. But the fact that there's a power vacuum for the Democrats and no leader, I believe it's a combination. We talk about their dramatic loss in November 5th. We're talking about that there's no real unifying Democratic voice because, in part, of the rejection by the American people of their policies and their candidates across the board. To hand the Republicans the legislative branch and the presidency. But I think part of this is that President Trump is working at such a feverish pace. He's issuing executive orders after executive orders. He's making himself available to the press. He is occupying the free airspace that's there. It's suffocating Democrats. There's no breath for them to take. Did they have a little blip here where they were able to take a shot because of the confusion and the Supreme Court, the federal courts blocking
the freeze, the
freeze on grants and funding for the OMB? Yeah, they did, but now it's gone. It was missed. It's now moving forward because at the same day, that was when President Trump signed a bunch of presidential executive orders regarding transgender and otherwise. I think that this is very clear that they are still shell-shocked. They don't know what kind of party they are. Even the progressives, they're going to stick to their failed policies. They're going to double down on their failed policies. We've seen that with those here in New York City and in the state of New York. They're still going to stick there, so they're not going to come around. I think the people who are, and if they want to look in the mirror as to who is the reason for this loss, it is Joe Biden, it is Barack Obama, it is Nancy Pelosi, it is Chuck Schumer, and it's the mainstream media. Those are the people that have led to the loss and really the demolition of the Democratic Party here nationally, especially in this election. The one person I would say comes out of this unscathed is Hakeem Jeffries. Honestly, I think that maybe
John
that's
Fetterman. And John
Fetterman. Thank you, sir. You're absolutely right. I was getting to John Fetterman and it was escaping me. He's showing the Democratic Party how to work with this. You're going to pick your spots. You're going to call the president when he's wrong. You're going to call when he's wrong. It can't be the resistance. You pick your spots. But he's also saying, I'm going to work with these people. If it's good for Pennsylvania, if it's good for the American people, I'm going to work with them.
Yeah,
one of the things, John Fetterman is not debating for himself, is anti-Semitism good or anti-Semitism bad?
No.
He knows. He comes out on the right side of the equation. Anti-Semitism is a bad thing.
And he was just on The View confronting... I
love John Fetterman.
He goes on there, and he said that Trump was a victim of political persecution by the prosecution by Bragg on that trumped-up, ridiculous case.
But I mean,
so good for him.
Exactly. But to your point, Richard, overarchingly, who's to blame? It's a fear of the radical progressive left, and we see examples of it all the time. Just this past week, Chuck Schumer, a man who has no moral compass, rallied the Democratic Senate to vote against sanctions on the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court is the same bastards that issued arrest warrants for Bibi Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant, all in an effort to delegitimize and destroy the state of Israel. It is a blatant act of anti-Semitism, but more importantly and more broadly, it is an attack on Western civilization in the United States, because the ICC has also been working from time to time to try to issue arrest warrants for Americans. The ICC only derives its power and only has jurisdiction over member states. Neither Israel or the United States are members, and yet the ICC is exercising that jurisdiction. It's an organization that needs to be utterly destroyed, and yet Chuck Schumer rallied the Democrats to kill it by invoking the 60 vote the filibuster.
60 vote cloture law.
By invoking the filibuster. The only Democrat that voted with Republicans to sanction the ICC was John Fetterman. The rest of them were gutless, and because they're afraid of the radical progressive left, which is anti-Israel, which is anti-Semitic, and next time Chuck Schumer says that he's a shomer, a guardian of Israel, this is the same guy that went into the witness protection program when the anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel rallies were going on at Columbia. This is the same guy whose answer to, how do you protect Israel is to call for new elections, regime change in Israel instead of Tehran. So, Richard, the real culprits here is the reason the Democratic Party is having a nervous breakdown is because they are spineless, weak, craven to the left of the radical progressive left of their party. And unless and until somebody stands up, like Bill Clinton did back in the 90s when he ran and said, no, we're going to move to the center, the Democratic Party's in a death spiral.
And don't forget on Schumer, as a leader of the Senate Democrats, could have stopped the nuclear deal with Iran.
Exactly.
And he let it go forward.
He let it happen.
And Jesse and Eric, the country has been paying the price for that stupidity, that foolishness, that cravenness.
The single worst foreign policy decision by the United States since the Second World War.
Well, I can't believe that this time is up. I'm absolutely shocked. Kevin, are you sure the time is up now? Kevin is giving a high sign. The time is up. He's giving me
He's breathing a sigh of relief.
What are you talking about? He's giving me the sign I grew up in Brooklyn with, across the throat, like cut my throat or something. I need protection. Maybe Trump will get me protection against Kevin and a control room. I don't know. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We've been delighted to be with you for the show. It seemed just so short. I can't believe it was so short today. But we'll be back with you next week on Let the Record Show. God bless you, your families, and God bless America. Thank you for listening.
This is Let the Record Show.